Welcome back to Rob's Garage. I'm Rob. This is my garage, and it's a little bit of a mess at the moment. I got a lot of shipments of parts and fluids here to maintain, repair, and upgrade the vehicles you see in front of you. So before I get to today's video, let me give a quick recap of the projects coming up here in Rob's Garage because I'll be making videos about them, and you might want to subscribe. We've got a lot of maintenance coming up here on the R6. Oil change, coolant flush, new spark plugs, new air filter. The Mini Cooper S has a broken door brake, as well as a PCV valve that needs to be replaced. Oil changes coming up here for the Corvette and the Ferrari F430, as well as the Range Rover Sport outside. Big announcement here in Rob's Garage. The wife gave me the blessing to participate in Bimmer Challenge for the second year. Bimmer Challenge is a time attack series here on the West Coast. We go to amazing racetracks like Buttonwillow, Willow Springs, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Sonoma Raceway, and Chuckwalla Raceway this year. I'll be missing the first two events. Why? Because I'm going to be doing some upgrades to try and get a little more competitive. So we've got new racing wheels and tires here, new racing seats. I'll be upgrading from a 4-point to a 6-point harness, a new racing power steering reservoir, as well as adjustable camber plates, and roll cage is on its way. So lots of great stuff coming up down the pipeline. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, I'm just an average guy. Like, I came from humble beginnings. I'm a nobody really in this world. I've just been very fortunate to work really hard and get recognized for it. It's enabled me to do a lot of great things and have a little bit of a car collection, have some fun on the track. You might have seen the videos I posted last year about visiting the Goodwood Revival, doing track days in India. I've been able to mix my love of comedy and cars together a couple times, meeting Alonzo Bowden, Adam Carolla, and most recently Jay Leno. A few months ago, I was invited to go to Jay Leno's garage because my dad was invited on the show. A car from the 1960s that you probably never heard of. It's called the Apollo GT. It's one of the coolest cars ever. But my dad is the utmost historian on it. He wrote a book about it. So Jay invited him on the show with a friend of my dad's who's got a very beautiful Apollo. So check out that video. I'll provide a link to it. The footage I'm about to show you is me riding one of my old motorcycles up to Jay's garage, touring his car and motorcycle collection, spend some time with Jay. I was a little starstruck and probably sound like an idiot talking to him. At the end, he saw the two-stroke motorcycle I had, and he asked all kinds of questions about it. So that was kind of the highlight for me, was showing him this old motorcycle that happened to belong to my grandfather. And I picked it up a couple years ago after it had left the family for a number of years. So check it out. This is a 1972 Suzuki GT550. And it's not easy to ride, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. So we're going to go ride it down the California coast. Check it out. Everyone knows Jay has a massive collection of automobiles. I counted over 220 in his garage. But what you may not know is he has an equally impressive motorbike collection. I didn't count them all, but I'd venture to say there was close to 100, possibly more. Everything in the garage is organized by make, so here you'll find the Indians, the classic British Nortons. There's several old BMWs. Not a lot of Japanese bikes, but a few Suzukis there in the background. I noticed a few Hondas. There's a classic Harley Davidson, several Vincents. What I found most impressive were his Brofs. I had never seen a Brof motorbike in person before. They are absolutely stunning. Just take a look at that. He's also got some more modern machinery, like the BMW R9T Racer here. Never ridden one of those, but sure would love to get my hands on one. And it appears he was also gifted a Yamaha R1 factory superbike. It looked to me like this was running the 2008 AMA Superbike Series. Speaking of Yamaha, here's an autographed helmet from Valentino Rossi, my favorite racer of all time. Jay has a huge collection of memorabilia, and this is the type of stuff you're not going to see on any other documentary or YouTube channel. Just collecting dust on shelves. It's everywhere. There's a Michael Jordan helmet, another signed by Colin Edwards, Wayne Rainey, Kenny Roberts Sr. And in the bathroom, guys, check this out. How would you like to have this hung up in your bathroom? autographed pictures from Michael Schumacher and Gerhard Berger, former Formula One drivers. Pictures of Ayrton Senna. It's just unbelievable the amount of stuff he's got. Now on to the automobiles. Here's a pair of three-wheel Morgans, a crazy British manufacturer. I just love the paint job he's got on that. And I bet you've never seen one of these before. This is an Indian, but it's not an Indian motorcycle. Yes, they actually made cars for a period of time. Now, everyone's talking about the world going electric. Well, Jay's here to prove that electric's been around for a long time. This is a 1912 Baker Electric Special he keeps plugged in the wall. I'm not much of a Bentley fan, but if I could have one Bentley, it certainly would be Jay's 1928 Speed 6. Race at Le Mans, very loud, very large, very rare. I'm also not much of a modern-day Bugatti fan. I know the new cars are very quick, they're very luxurious, but they're super expensive, and they don't look nearly as good as the Type 57 SC Coupe Aero from 1936 that you see here. Bugatti was experimenting with aerodynamics at the time. Look how modern it was and how futuristic it looked for its day. Jay also has another one of my favorite race cars, which is a Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. And he's also got a Mercedes McLaren SLR here. Now, what's interesting about this unique car is he's got it parked near his McLaren collection, not his Mercedes collection, because I guess, both companies played a huge role in the development, but perhaps McLaren more so. He's got my favorite McLaren of all time, the 1994 F1. It's a 3-seat road car. I remember when this car came out. It was just amazing. Jay told me that of all the cars in his collection, this is the one he drives the least. I think it's the second most expensive car in his collection, valued north of $12 million now. But he also confirmed the rumor, which is that if you have to diagnose computer issues with the car, you dial it up to the internet, and a gentleman in the Joaquin factory in England will use a 1994 compact laptop to diagnose it. Here we have Jay's collection of Ford GTs. I'm surprised he didn't have an original race car from the 1960s, but he does have what I think was a great rendition, the 2005 Ford GT that you see here. I almost bought one of these a few years back, and now I kick myself because they've gone up so much in value. Jay's got a pair of AC Cobras. I just love that parking sign there. A blue Cobra and a black Cobra. Here's some of Jay's Jaguars. Now, the E-Type is one of my favorite cars of all time, and Jay tends to agree. I say these are some of his Jaguars because he has a separate workshop on site. That's where I met Jay at first, and he showed me in his workshop a recently acquired E-Type that he had picked up. They found it just a few miles down the street. The police were clearing out a residence of somebody who had passed away, and apparently the guy was a hoarder, had boxes just stacked up on top of this E-Type over decades, and Jay picked it up. The car's in really good shape, just needs a good overhaul. I think you'll be seeing that on a future episode of a show. That's the perfect segue to introduce you to another 1960s sports car classic, the car that ultimately brought me to Jay's garage. Sometimes mistaken for an E-Type Jag, but it is called an Apollo GT. This is an American car. It was designed and engineered by Americans in the Bay Area of California using Buick engines and Buick running gear. They designed the bodies and then had them hand-built in Italy and then shipped over to the Bay Area for final production. It's unfortunate the company went out of business before even making 100 units because it is such a beautiful looking and beautiful sounding car. It handles extremely well. Now for a little behind the scenes perspective into the production of a Jay Leno's Garage episode. You'll see the crew setting up the lighting and the mics and the cameras here. What impresses me about Jay is the guy is so charismatic and so well spoken and so knowledgeable about the cars he brings on a show that he comes walking on the stage just shooting from the hip with no script, and within like 2 takes he recorded the whole intro. Equally impressive were my dad and his buddy, who also had no script, didn't even know what questions Jay was going to ask them, but they did, it's come across so natural that I think they made the editor's job very, very easy. Of course, my dad, he owned the first production Apollo that was ever made. It sat in my garage in the early 2000s. It was a rust bucket. I never quite had the funding to do a full restoration, but through that ownership experience, he did get to know the original owners of the company, and he interviewed everybody involved in that car production that enabled him to write this book about the Apollo. He's a real historian on it. Jay was very impressed, and he just fell in love with this car, and You could tell he was really jealous that he doesn't have one of these in his massive car collection, but I'm sure you'll be seeing one in the future. When you watch these episodes of Jay's Garage, the editors make it appear as if they stop the conversation on the floor, jump in the car, and immediately take off for a drive. But in reality, there's a huge time gap between when they finish talking and when they actually go for that drive, because they need to set up these very impressive camera rigs to get ready for the street shots. If you're enjoying this video, do yourself a favor. Hit the subscribe button so I can share future car and motorcycle experiences with you. Whether it's meeting great people like Jay, fixing or modifying your bike or ride, or showing you how to take your car and put it on the racetrack. So while Jay was out driving the Apollo GT around, I finished touring his garage, and what do I stumble upon? Stuffed way in the back of the garage? A Ferrari 308 GTB, I believe. How can this be? Jay's always said publicly he'll never purchase a Ferrari. I don't blame him. The dealerships are extremely arrogant. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't buy from a dealership either. So I don't know if this is actually his car, or it's just being parked there on loan, or maybe it is public knowledge that he owns this particular Ferrari, and I'm just the last person on earth to find out about it. I didn't have the guts to actually approach him and ask him about it later, but I love the car, and hats off to him for having it in the garage. Here we have a portion of Jay's Lamborghini collection, starting with the legendary Countach. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, every boy had a poster of either the Countach or a Ferrari Testarossa. It's that iconic of a car. Everybody wanted to have one. And right next to it, Jay has not one, but two Lamborghini Miuras. For those of you who are younger and may not know your supercar history, the Lamborghini Miura is often regarded as the first supercar. And speaking of supercars, here we have one of the most iconic of all time, the Porsche Carrera GT. In my opinion, it's the best sounding road car that's ever been made. It's the perfect balance between analog and digital technology, a balance we'll probably never see again because everything is moving so computer and electronic controlled. My only complaint about it, not a big fan of the interior, but what does it matter? I'll never be able to afford one anyway. And wrapping up the tour here with a couple quirky vehicles I came across, starting with comedian Jeff Dunham's Ford Econoline van. It was featured in a subsequent episode of Jay's Garage. You can look it up on YouTube. And then I found this British military tank. So you probably know Jay's got a tank car. It wasn't there the day I was touring, but he also has this actual legitimate tank. I don't know anything about tanks, so I don't know what kind it is, but I just thought it was really unique that he's got a real tank in his garage. After Jay finished driving the Apollo GT around town, he was kind enough to pose for a few photographs with me and the fellow gearheads. I gotta tell you, Jay is a really down-to-earth guy. Really enjoy spending time with him. So after being starstruck from meeting Jay in person, drooling over his collection all day long, you might have thought that would be it. But actually, the real highlight for me came at the very end when I went to leave. Jay saw my bike and he said, "Hey, whose bike is that? Tell me about that." I said, "Well, look, it's a 72 Suzuki GT550. My grandpa originally had it in Michigan. He used to come pick me up on it, take me for rides when I was like 4 years old. Gave it to my cousin years later, and as an adult, my cousin sold it off. We thought we'd never see the bike again, but found it a few years ago, restored by a guy on the West Coast, not too far from me. And he did a marvelous job with it. Jay just loved the bike, loved the story. And he said, "Look, you ever want to come back to my garage, hang out? You're welcome anytime." So I've got to take him up on that. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed that. Do yourself a favor, subscribe to the channel to get more great content on cars and motorcycles in the future. I'll see you on down the road.